Good morning. The July 12th Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Item 2.04 is establish agenda order, and the agenda will stand as published. Item 2.05 is recognitions, and we don't have any this morning. Item 2.06, Employee of the Month, actually it was for June, and this is Mrs. Sasso.
Today, the Board of Education celebrates and recognizes student advocacy in our schools. Many students need someone to look out for them, someone to help take them towards academic success. A student advocate is a person who empowers their students. They give advice, encouragement, or a listening ear. It's an individual that lets a student know that they have someone who believes in them and who is there for them. Meet Teresio Sims, Annapolis High School student advocate and our Employee of the Month for June. Teresio's role as student advocate requires him to interact with many of the same students who are struggling with the same issues on a daily basis. In this unique position, he is the first line of defense and support of his students. Mr. Sims' role as student advocate requires him to interact with students in the hallways and around the buildings on a consistent basis. He lends a helping hand to students who are having difficult times managing emotional situations, managing the academic aspects of their lives, or dealing with a variety of their struggles. His daily actions and his dedication to his students serve as a valuable model for both the students and the student advocate team. There is never a question of which duties Mr. Sims has or has not completed, and he is more than willing to take the initiative to address situations that arise, including building coverage during transition, conflicts between students, and conflicts between students and teachers. To lead by example day in and day out is often the key to a high level of professionalism. Mr. Sim's tireless dedication to the students, staff, and school have made him an indispensable commodity to Annapolis High School, as he truly represents the model of consistency, initiative, and positivity that school leaders strive for all students and staff to embrace. Teresio Sims, you embody all of the character traits of a consummate professional. Your positive presence every single day for Annapolis High School students and your level of energy is indicative of and a contributing factor to the positive climate and culture of the school building. So on behalf of the Board of Education, the students, teachers, and staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, the board is honored to recognize you as Employee of the Month for June 2017 for your excellent work and dedication to the students of Annapolis High. Congratulations. Please join me up front. What excuse did they give you to bring you here, Teresa?
Well, they told me prior to me coming here because on that particular day, my daughter was being promoted, so I couldn't make it.
So what happened that they brought you in July? They had to tell you the truth?
They told me the truth from the beginning because I was glad to be recognized, but I couldn't make it that day, so I'm happy to be here today.
Are there any family members or school members here with you today?
My daughter is here, Tamia, and Mrs. Chittum is my principal. She's here as well.
Okay. Well, not only do you get your certificate, Teresa, but you get a bell. So when you're down the halls and you need to call somebody's attention, guess what? It even has your name, so nobody can take it.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Congratulations. We'll do pictures after item 5.01. Item 2.07 is school and community highlights, and I just want to kick it off by congratulating and welcoming our newest board member to the dais. Lucia Cole was sworn in yesterday, and we're so happy to have you here. Mrs. Hummer.
I took part in one of our summer activities, and I've gone a couple of times to the farmers market at Brooklyn Park Middle School, and it is great. The produce is wonderful. We have loaded up on fruit, and it is gone in a day when I bring it home. So I recommend to everybody go on Mondays between 11 and 2 to Brooklyn Park Middle School and check out the farmers market there.
Next on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 2 cards today, John Earl and Jean Lisica.
Perfect. All right. Can you hear me? Yep. All right. Good morning. My name is John Earl. I live in Shadyside, Maryland. I'm a homeowner, engineer, and have 5 school-aged children. I come here before you this morning to implore that you do not allow Milestone Corporation to build the cell phone tower at Shadyside Elementary School. Prior submissions to this board have demonstrated how building a cell tower at a school significantly lowers surrounding property values by as much as 20% and creates a very negative aesthetic. I am really disappointed that Milestone has been allowed to schedule their public meeting for July 19th on this issue over the summer when the student body is on vacation and notice has not been given to the stakeholders, the parents, about this public meeting. I only found out due to a mailing from Milestone that's required to be given out to property owners within 200 feet of the proposed tower. So I urge you to table this proposal until school is in session come September, and for the stakeholders, the people you represent, to be able to be a part of the process. Holding it during the summer is not transparent. I'm not sure the PTO has been notified or the parents of the student body. Kevin Maxwell, the CEO of PG County Schools, he wrote in a letter to a PG County School Board member recently that, and I quote, I concur with you that Milestone Communications has not met our desired standards of transparency, communication, and community engagement. Your displeasure with their process, which we share with you, has been clearly communicated to Milestone Communications, end quote. I also think it's important to note that Prince George's County and Montgomery County no longer allow cell phone towers to be built on elementary school grounds. I'm also very concerned about the health effects for my children, my wife, my neighbors, who'll be exposed 24/7 to microwave radiation constantly from the cell phone tower. Not to mention all the young elementary school children that spend at least 7 hours a day for 180 days a year in the school underneath the tower. The World Health Organization has classified microwave radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, and many countries around the globe are putting out public warnings, especially toward exposure to young children, because the long-term effects on their developing bodies and brains, it just isn't well known. Lots of legitimate peer-reviewed studies coming out every day, especially in the past year, showing strong evidence of harmful effects to humans from microwave radiation. Including organizations across America are also taking action. For example, the International Association of Firefighters, quote, opposes the use of fire stations as base stations for towers and antennas for the conduction of cell phone transmissions until a study of the highest scientific merit and integrity on health effects to low-intensity RF radiation is conducted, and that it is proven that such sites are not hazardous to the health of our members, end quote. I personally just feel our children should be protected in the same way. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I would like to let you know the PTA was advised. I personally went to the first meeting where we sat there, and I'm trying to remember the date, but it was like 2 months ago, and the president of the PTA was there when Milestone did the initial presentation to the heads of the community that were there.
Okay, super. I'll be in touch with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is Jean Lasica still here?
Hi, Jean Lesica, Shady Side, same issue, 5 main concerns, health and wellness. It's clear that scientific research is at best inconclusive regarding whether living, working, or going to school near cell phone towers poses a risk for cancer or other health problems. And an American Cancer Society study cited on the Verizon Wireless webpage for this project says that at this time, there's very little evidence to support this idea, which is pretty vague on its face, but that same study continues to say that very few human studies have focused specifically on cellular phone towers and cancer risk. So if long-term exposure does in fact result in cancer, and additional research confirms that the link supported by the World Health Organizations, there will be hundreds of court cases. Right now in Ripon, California, parents are going against the school district right now because children have come up with rare forms of cancer that they claim occurred because long-term exposure to a cell phone tower placed at their school. And regardless of merit, if this would tie up money and time for the district, and if similar cases in Anne Arundel came up, basically, I would say the first kid that gets cancer might sue the board, the district, or look for recourse. Safety concerns, maintenance workers will be allowed 24 access to the facility and can drive in at any time with trucks, while the facility, I assume, will be fenced in. It's still on school property with site access to children playing and learning on a regular basis. Parents and teachers will have no way of knowing if these workers are safe to be around children. And additionally, many counties, including, as my friend mentioned, Montgomery County, classify cell phone towers as hazmat sites because of the chemicals and the batteries, the diesel fuel, and other operating materials. So essentially, we're putting a hazmat site on school grounds. Traffic patterns, I don't know if anyone's talked about that. Due to the school's location in small rural area, it has limited access. So people know that drop-offs and pick-offs at Shadyside Elementary are already congested and dangerous due for pedestrian traffic. So an increase in commercial vehicles would not be supported by the current infrastructure. Property value, again, fiscally speaking, in terms of revenue, which I believe is important to the board, this means a significant loss in property taxes for the state based on the number of homes that are potentially affected. And then, again, transparency and a flawed communication process. The community has largely been uninformed. While legal requirements have technically been met, the school board sending a really small postcard shape in the summer notifying people that everyone I've talked with has been relatively unaware that you are proposing to build this on school property. So I'm not a doctor, but I wonder why we would want to risk putting a tower right at school next to residential communities when there is even the slightest risk that there could be negative health or safety side effects. So I would urge the board to reconsider this application. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Site access, so that you know, since I was at the meeting, they will never basically be on the school grounds themselves. They are basically, the road that is on the right side is only their access. It will be fenced in, and they will never touch the grounds where the children are.
I understand that, but if you have been to the school, you understand that Snug Harbor is right by the playground, and to get to that site access on Idlewild Road, you're going to be seeing where the children play on an everyday basis, where they hold any type of their community little gatherings with their school. And so that's what I mean by site access. And this, parents and teachers, we don't background check Verizon employees, so that's a concern.
But there's no need for them, because the area where they go, yes, they go through the same road, they turn left, and then they access a fenced area.
I understand that. I'm just saying site access to seeing the children play with increased commercial traffic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? All right, we'll move on to consent items. Do I have a motion to bundle 4.01 through 4.11 and move them from information to action? So moved. Second. All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education award contracts as listed on today's agenda, 4.01 through 4.11.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Sasso.
I just have two questions. 4.06, where it says award of contract general trades to George Cromwell Elementary School. What do you consider the general trades to be? I mean, is it a general contractor?
For the record, Alex Shackno, Chief Operating Officer. That essentially is like the carpentry trades. They'll be building the walls, the studs hanging the drywall, doing the ceilings. So it's the non-trade specific elements of the project.
Thank you.
Mrs. Howard.
I think if we're approving a contract that the title is milk and juice, that we should have been given a snack.
To taste it, correct?
That's
To
right.
taste it. Yes.
All those in favor? Motion passes. I guess it's 7-0. I said 8-0. Item 5.01 is the election of Board of Education officers for 2017-2018. Mrs. Sasso.
I so move to elect Julie Hummer as the president of the board for 2017 to 2018.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
I so move to elect Terry Gilliland as our vice president for the board of 2017 to 2018.
All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations. We'll take a break now.
Thank you, everyone. I'm excited to do leadership, and I ask that everyone be patient with me, especially today, because as I try to figure out the right way to do everything on the agenda. So, what? Oh, and I have big shoes to fill. Stacy has done an excellent job for the past 3 years, and I just want to thank her very much for all of her service and all of her help that she's been. And I will be asking you lots of questions, which I just did, to ask about agendas and things. And I'm very fortunate that I have 3 former presidents on the board, and Teresa and Patty and Stacy, who have excellent experience that can help us as we go along. So thank you all, ladies. So, and now we move on to item 5.02. It's an action item, appointment of board counsel. Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. It is recommended that the board appoint the law firm of Carney, Callahan, Bresler, Bennett, and Scherer, LLP, board counsel for 2017-2018.
So moved. Second.
All right. Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any, oh, I'm sorry. Terry, your button.
I just want to point out that it is pursuant to the contractual terms that we're agreeing upon. Just want to make sure everyone knows that we are signing a contract.
Yes. Okay. Are there any public comments? All right. And then, do it now vote. We have all those in favor of approving the contract? The motion passes 7-0. All right. Item 5.03 is an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the personnel listed on the attached sheet and that they be promoted and or appointed.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. All right. Item 5.04 is an action item, also personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.05 is an action item, policy purchasing authority. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DE, subject to final correction for style and format.
Oh, the vote. Do. Are there any board questions or comments? All right. Are there any public comment? All right. And
All those in favor.
all those in favor, we're not having a president.
Right, the presentation's third reading.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.06, an action item, policy DEA, purchasing procedures. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DEA, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? So, all those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.07, bidding procedures, DEB. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DEB, subject to final correction for style and format.
Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.08, also an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DEC, subject to final correction for style and format.
So moved. Second.
All right. Are there any board questions or comments? Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you. I'll fix it. One question, just to follow up on our discussion last month, when we discussed the tie-in to the ethics policy, and I wanted to ask if it was okay with you that on B, under issue, the second sentence preceding the board desires that we change, and if okay with you, then I'll offer it as an amendment to the board to stipulate in accordance with board policy BAF, ethics and conflicts of interest, the board intends, and then it continues to ensure that the integrity. Will that meet your requirements?
For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. Yes, Mr. Gilliland, there was a question as to the definition of gifts and whether campaign contributions would be considered gifts. And so upon additional research, Policy BAF, Ethics and Conflicts of Interest, specifically states that gifts, that campaign contributions are not gifts. So I think it would be appropriate to cross-reference that policy in DEC. And then I can do the same on the regulation as well for consistency.
Perfect. And if okay with the board, then I'll offer that as an amendment. So for B issue, the second sentence of that paragraph would say, in accordance with policy BAF, ethics and conflicts of interest, the board intends. The rest of that sentence remains the same. The board intends to ensure that the integrity of the purchasing policies and business partnerships are maintained for the benefit of the business community as well as AACPS at the highest ethical level possible.
Second. Are there any other board questions or comments on the amendment? Any public comment? All those in favor of the amendment? The amendment passes 7-0. Now we'll vote on the overall policy. Any questions or comments on the overall policy? Any public comment? On the thing on, I'm sorry. Any public comment? I'll get this. Any public comment? All those in favor? Policy passes 7-0. Next is item 5.09, an action item, transfer easements pertaining to board property. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DH, subject to final correction for style and format.
So moved. Second.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.10 is an action item, joint agreements, policy KF. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy KF, subject to final correction for style and format.
Second.
Are there any board questions or comments on this policy? Are there any public comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.11 is an information item, and we do have a staff presentation. Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, again, for the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. The Division of Curriculum and Instruction brings policy IH, instructional materials, to you for first reading. This policy was last revised on May 20th, 1991. The updated policy addresses instructional materials for students, and the policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment. We can answer any questions you may have.
Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? And so this will now be posted on the website for 30 days for public comment.
Yes, correct. And I also just wanted to know, as indicated in the yellow sheet, that currently we have policy IH, IHA, and IHB that all relate to instructional materials. And so what we've done here is we've consolidated those into one policy, which will be IH, and one regulation, IHRA, just for efficiency. It made more sense to do it that way. And so we'll talk about IHA and IHB when we discuss rescinding policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item 5.12 is also an information item. It's rescinding of policies. And Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, so the Superintendent is recommending that the board rescind the following policies. Policy DAA, Financial Management Priority Objectives. Policy IFJ, Religion in Schools. Policy IFN, Technology Education. Policy IHA, Textbook Selection and Adoption. Policy IHB, Supplemental Materials. And policy KGA, Crisis Intervention Team. I reference IHA and IHB being incorporated into the new revised policy IH. The other policies are older, and they've essentially been incorporated into existing policies that we have now, so they're kind of duplicative and unnecessary. So that's why it is being recommended that they be rescinded.
Ms. Burge. You say Ms. Gilliland on my button.
Oh, I am not Miss Gilliland. Mr. Kim.
Ms. Burge.
My question is, so I'm assuming that we won't rescind these policies until we've adopted the corresponding policies, IHA and IHB.
Yes. So
Otherwise, we'd be without a policy.
exactly. So my recommendation would be specifically to policies IHA and IHB to hold off on rescinding those until we've adopted the new revised policy IH. With the other policies, because they've essentially already been incorporated into current policies, I would recommend that you can go ahead and rescind those. We've recommended that these be posted online for a 30-day public comment period to allow the public to comment on this proposed action and then be taken up at the next board meeting in August.
But those other two will wait until the same meeting or the following meeting after we
Yes, it
adopt
would
the
be the
others.
September meeting. The August meeting will be the second reading because the 30-day public comment period will have passed on IH. So then third reading would be your September meeting for.
Otherwise, we'd be wandering in no man's land about textbook selection and adoption for 30 days, and that would be a crisis.
Are there any further board questions or comments? Any public comment? All right, so these policies will be posted on the website for a 30-day public comment period?
Yes, correct.
All right.
Okay,
I
thank
believe
you.
that's all. Thank you. Okay, item number 6.01 is a review item, construction status report. There's no presentation. This is just,
Ready to answer questions on the
Okay.
project.
okay. So, are there any board questions or comments on the construction status report for the team? Everyone looking through. Everything looks to be on target and on schedule? That's a good start. Coming along? So, all right. Are there any public comments? All right. That's it. Thank you. Item number 6.02 is a review item. What exactly is it? Doesn't have a title. What am I missing? Okay.
Right, so award of contracts, review and award of contracts.
Okay. Review and award of contracts? I'm sorry. Did we vote on that? It's not
No,
action.
it's just a review item. If there are
Okay.
any questions or comments by the board.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board on item 6.02? Okay. Are there any public comments? All right. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Shaknovich. And then what was there? All right, that that's concludes the public portion of our meeting. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, August 23rd at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Madam President. And before we close, I just want to acknowledge the Boy Scouts who are here. As an Eagle Scout myself, I just want to say thank you for being here today. I move that the board enter into executive session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
Second.
All those in favor?